From 1950 on were in charge of prosecuting Nazi crimes. They showed absolutely no interest, and it started to change with the Eichmann trial. So 61, Mossad had identified Eichmann in Buenos Aires in Argentina and invited him to visit Israel. Since that trial, we still have trials going on in Germany. If we find any Nazis, we still try them. Which means we're dragging 90-year-old Nazis or former Nazi members to court, because these trials are not about re-socializing people. They haven't committed crimes against the law, they have committed crimes against humanity, but they were ordered by their government. So the reason why we trial them is we want to send a message to victims and survivors that they are not forgotten. So these trials are a political, or there's a political will behind that, and that's why we still try them, and why there is no statute of limitation on war crime trials in Germany. You see, we're now driving along the prison, which is still an active prison. The brick building behind that, that's the women's prison, which is only about 10% of the area. 90% of the cells are for men, which is pretty interesting. We have a gender ratio of 50-50 in Germany, but the prison cells ratio 90 to 10. Maybe men commit more crimes than women do. Maybe women are just smarter and they don't get caught that often. Or, and that's what I believe, there is no justice in the world. And now about we're passing the area of Courtroom 600 where the Nazis had been kept and executed. The green building coming up, that's another kind of a prison. That's a public high school. And it's getting even better now. On the other side of that high school is a brewery and a beer garden. That's a lovely neighborhood for education, isn't it? So, but the Eichmann trial also started something else in Germany. It sparked the generation conflict. Over the 40s, 50s and early 60s, the Germans had usually preferred to tell the narrative that only Hitler, Himmler and maybe some from the defendant stock had committed crimes and everyone else did not. And Eichmann now testified in Jerusalem and told the judges that he couldn't have done his job so efficiently that deporting Jewish communities from all over Europe to the death camps without the help of all these regular civil servants in city halls that wrote deportation lists that he knew whom to deport and murder without the help of all the workers in the railroad company. So Eichmann told the public that the ordinary Germans, the average people on a much wider scale, were involved in Nazi crimes. And that started the generation conflict. Because then my parents' generation started to point out that if there was a denazification by the Allies, there was one, how could it be that all these former Nazi officials are in leading positions again? And the conflict lasted for close to 30 years, from the early 60s to the mid-90s, for two reasons. The younger generation that started the conflict were students when they did that, so until these people were, they started that when they were in their early 20s. And until these people were in the leading positions of companies, political parties and organizations, until they could really change something, it just took 25 to 30 years. Also, of course, then over that course of time, a lot of former Nazis had just passed away. The second reason why it took that long is the Cold War. To give you a milestone of the debate, on May 8th, 1985, at the 40th anniversary of the end of the war, the German state president, so the highest member of the German government, even above the chancellor, but just representing the government, not in charge of daily politics, the German state president stated in a speech addressing the parliament, we should be honest with ourselves, we should see May 8th not as a day of shame that we lost the war, but it's a day of liberation, that all allies made all these sacrifices so that we can live in a democracy again. And we should be thankful for that. That's, for example, something I would say where 99% of the people on the streets would agree upon. In the 80s, he was openly attacked for that speech, mainly from in political commentaries, mainly, well, to paraphrase them, how does he dare? All our brave German soldiers who gave their lives on the Eastern Front fighting these bloody communists, how could he stab them in the back that way? And, for example, this myth of the good German army that had fought a war according to the Geneva Conventions, and that only a few crimes had been committed by the SS, by some little sub-organization, that obvious lie, that myth wasn't necessary anymore after the Cold War was over. So the beginning of the Cold War stalled trials in Germany. It caused for a situation that a lot of Nazis were never facing justice because they rebuilt the country instead. And the end of the Cold War opened up a new chance for Germans to deal with their history, because then all these myths and narratives became obsolete, weren't necessary anymore. At the moment, the speed and the pace is totally different. I'm going to explain that in a minute or two, but first we're about to see St. John's Cemetery. So we're going to see a 700-year-old cemetery in a moment that has nothing to do with the Nazi topic. Still, I recommend get your cameras ready, because in a minute there's going to be a wonderful photo opportunity on the right hand side. And the problem is, until the last moment we do not know if there's a tram coming up or not. So just keep your cameras ready.
This would be a place for a smart car, not on our freeways.
You see why Germans love small cars instead of pickups.
I do. That and the gasoline.
What?
I wish you had taught my history class back when. Way back when. I would have had a greater appreciation.
Okay, so on the right side, 500-year-old cemetery, ignore that part, the oldest part, 600 to 700 years old, coming up behind the little groundkeeper building.
Beautiful building. Oh my, it's gorgeous.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes. All these flowers. Oh, they really put the fun back at funeral. You see, my jokes are getting better over the course of the tour.
They are.
So, the change of pace at the moment. I've mentioned that earlier when I said if there's a problem, it's not topic related but generational. The generation I'm dealing with at high school, they're usually 15, 16, so that means their grandparents have been born in the late 30s, early 40s, sometimes even after the war. So for them, the generation responsible is already one generation longer ago, their great-grandparents, which means they're also out of the communicative memory. So usually we have a 5 generations window
Interesting.
of history that's alive, and everything that drops out of that window is just a topic for museums. I can remember stories my grandparents told me and can tell that to my grandchildren one day. That's kind of the 5 generations window. Now the generation we're dealing with, for them, those perpetrators are out of that window. So the problem is they sometimes don't see the necessity to care about the issue. Let me explain that with a non-World War, or illustrate it with a non-World War II related example. I was born in 1982. So, and I know in the summer of 1989, before the wall came down, my family went to northern Germany. We visited some friends, and I have some faint distant memories that I was standing on some hilltop looking across the Elbe River. On the other side I saw these minefields, barbed wire, tanks, guards, dogs on patrol, everything they needed that people didn't want to escape from the communist paradise. So if we would be talking about the Cold War here, you and I would be on the same page. You have much more experience than I, but I have some distant memories myself. Now the funny thing is, my sister is just 5 years younger than me, born in 87. But when we talk about the Cold War in the family, for her, that's already ancient history, because she has no personal memories of that. So, and that's really interesting to observe how sometimes these generational, or these conflicts, so to speak, the trenches in the conflicts remain very stable and steady, and things don't move much over decades, and then all of a sudden, in between 4 or 5 years, it's a completely different thing. And these 4 or 5 years of age difference make a total difference in how people perceive the world around them, how much weight they give to historical events, how much importance they give these events as guidelines for daily actions. That's exactly what we're experiencing here right now with the whole Nazi topic in Germany. So you see some buses in front of us. We're arriving in the Old Town. So there's one last topic left, and that's the thing with how did the German deals with when the Allies bombed their cities. That's what I want to cover on the market square. Then I want to use the market square also to give you recommendations how to find your way around, what you can do with your free time. Because of all the other groups we had here this morning at the documentation center blocking the courthouse, we have about 5 to 10 minutes delay.